Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Scorpion's Rock Believer Deluxe Edition, out February 25th on Spine Farm. The album has 16 tracks, 64 minutes in length, and this is the band's 19th full-length studio album. First studio album in 7 years, longest gap between records for this iconic German rock band. As far as the design goes, this is a record that while being a deluxe edition, it could technically be a double record. It has enough tracks for it and definitely enough minutes. It's just a long record all around, very robust from that perspective. So you have to be careful on how you design it in order for the listener to stay connected and enjoy the experience all around. Considering all the tools at their disposal, considering the songs that they have, I think they managed to create an album that has that sense of flow. An album that is built around certain borders, certain guidelines, and they never really broke away from those guidelines. It's not a roller coaster ride, it doesn't have peaks and valleys, but it moves extremely well. It moves up and down, and it moves forward at the exact same time. There's never two songs that have similarities or similar attributes back to back, which makes the record feel more mobile. It gives more movement to the album, and that movement is really important when you're looking at 16 songs, 64 minutes. You want the experience for the listener to be as seamless as possible, and I feel like the structure of this record definitely offers that. Now, outside of the design, you have to look at this album from two different angles, the two driving forces of everything else, and that is the guitars and vocals. Every Scorpions album is driven by the guitars and vocals. There's nothing new here, but I felt like on this record, perhaps those two elements are not only a little bit more in the forefront, they are a little bit better defined in terms of the role that they have in the sound and the experience of this album. This is a record that doesn't have a rock arena style approach. That doesn't mean it's not rich, that doesn't mean it doesn't have great sound quality, that doesn't mean it doesn't have grit, and that doesn't mean that the guitars don't drive the overall experience. All of those things are still there, they're still true, but the album doesn't have that same power that we've seen in previous records that really creates this moving experience within the songs from song to song, allowing the tracks to feel larger than life. This record is a lot more grounded, a lot more compact from that perspective. It feels more bare bones at times. Because of that, it's easier to digest. You don't get lost in it. You don't get lost in all those other elements. You don't get lost in that big space that the sound creates, that rock arena vibe. It's not there. So you're able to funnel in exactly to all the little details that make up this record, and you're able to understand them a lot better because there's not enough around it to really fog the emotions or fog your perception of what is happening within the sound within each and every single track. So you're going to have the guitars driving the force of this record, pushing the album forward, not necessarily with power or intensity or big epic moments, but rather with grit, with a lot of grit. This is a shooting from the hip, rock and roll style sounding record from start to finish. It just gives you different shades of rock as you progress throughout its entire existence. Now, the drums on this record, this is the first studio album from Mikkey D, and he delivers. He knows that if you're going to put together an album that has this sort of sound, that has this more bare bones rock and roll, pure rock and roll sound to it, that the drums play an important role in order to compact that sound but not overpower it. You still have to let the guitars do the driving, you still have to let the guitars do all the heavy lifting, and that's exactly what's happening here. He's just creating the perfect backdrop in order to elevate the quality of sound that the guitars have and allow them to take that podium and be the drivers of the experience. Now, vocally, Klaus is phenomenal. I think this guy is getting better with age. It's incredible that he sounds the way he does after 19 records. His voice is magnificent. He carries a lot of the weight on this record. While the guitars are the drivers of the experience sound-wise, we cannot deny how much weight this man holds on his shoulders throughout the entire existence of this record. A lot of the momentum that these songs have, a lot of the emotion that's carried, not just within the lyrics, but in terms of how you perceive these tracks, really comes down to his voice, his range, his approach, and the slight changes that he gives within the songs and from song to song in order to allow the tracks to still feel altogether part of a much bigger picture, part of a Scorpions album, but still have their individual DNA alive and well from song to song. His voice is just overall outstanding. Now, this is an album that has great attributes. It really feels like it's put together in a very compact, in a very balanced way, with enough peaks and valleys, with enough ebbs and flows to make the experience feel engaging and allowing the listener to stay connected with it. I just felt like the record perhaps was too simple, or felt too simple to me. It didn't have enough of a haze, it didn't have enough of a strength, enough power, that the songs are not just existing within borders, but they're breaking those borders and they're starting to become larger than life. This album doesn't have that sort of explosion. It's not a larger than life record. It's a very well done, well crafted, solid rock and roll album from front to back, but nothing more, nothing less. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Hot and Cold, a shoot from their hip rock and roll song. I mean, the whole album is a shoot from the hip rock and roll record. This song is no different. This one perhaps feels a little bit more that way because it has some country vibes, some country influences in the soundscape, in the execution, and how this track is going to be perceived by the listener. They're very minimal, but they're there. If you start to peel the layers, you can find that country twang that exists within the sound of this song. Now, the guitars are gritty, they're thick, they're to the point. More catchy and melodic sound in the chorus. The song definitely changes approach from what you're getting in the verses versus the chorus. The chorus is definitely the climax of the track and therefore has a lot more melody in it. The vocals help define that melody in the chorus, help make that chorus more impactful, and then overall the guitars define the movement that the song has, and they define the experience that the song gives. Great solo section on this track. That's something that we could say about almost every single song on this album. The solos throughout this entire record are on point, phenomenal. Perhaps the most explosive moments are the solos on this entire album. While some of the tracks feel perhaps more controlled, the solos allow the songs to breathe a little bit better. This one is a perfect example of that. After the solo, the song returns to the original pattern. Very complete track, Hot and Cold. Next you have When You Know. Now this song is going to come in two different formats. The original format and then the acoustic format. Honestly, when you have a good song, it doesn't matter how you play it. It's going to be good either way. This is your prototypical Scorpions ballad. It sounds magnificent in the original format. It sounds magnificent in the acoustic format. One of the songs that really stands out on this album, because on a record that doesn't have that rock arena feel, sound, and experience, this is the only song that gives it. The moment you press play on this track, you need 2 seconds to know you're listening to a Scorpions track. The DNA of the band, the DNA that the band has been evolving and growing and really caressing over 19 records is present, alive and well on this phenomenal song, this phenomenal ballad that has all the right Scorpion attributes in order to be a memorable track all around. I love the experience, I love the execution. It's beautiful, it's melodic, both musically and vocally, beautifully and melodic. The chorus is so hooky, it's so catchy, it really brings you in, and it's a track that offers you a sense of progression from beginning all the way to the end. It starts very stripped out and it starts to gain some volume as you progress down the line. Beautiful execution, and it doesn't matter, once again, if you're listening to the original format or the acoustic, they come out phenomenal both ways. Last but not least, When Tomorrow Comes, a grittier rock track. This is just a rock track, but a rock track that has a very interesting structure, very interesting sound approach. The bass on this song is phenomenal, and it's phenomenal because it sounds great, but because it has also a big impact on how you're going to perceive this track. This is a song that has stops and goes. So when it stops, the bass comes in, and it's pretty much the bass that drives the experience of the track musically. Then the guitars come in, the song becomes more robust, there's a peak, there's an extension of energy that allows the track to grow. Then it comes back to the bass, it drops back out again. So it has this stop and go feel all the way throughout, but that makes the song very engaging all around. And it's also very engaging vocally because the tone is phenomenal and really works its way throughout these movements, throughout these stop and goes perfectly well, and makes the song feel very connected, even though it has this sense of break always constantly. It's always breaking, but the vocals allow those breaks to feel a little bit smoother and allow the overall experience of the song to be one that has more of a robust nature to it, making the track feel like it has power when it needs to, and it becomes a little bit darker, a little bit more introspective when it also needs to. Very interesting song, very interesting movement, still a lot of grit on the guitars, still a lot of fuzziness on those guitars that give that pure rock sound that makes this track connect with everything else that's in this record, even though construction wise and sound wise at times it sounds different and it sounds very independent from everything else. This is it, Scorpions Rock Believer Deluxe Edition, out February 25th. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.